There is breaking news in the White House, war on Fox News. In case you thought it was only Chief of Staff Rahm Emanuel, Presidential Advisor David Axelrod, and Communications Director Anita Dunn who conspired to take on Fox News, think again. It turns out President Obama knows all about it. Don't believe us? Listen to what President Obama had to say tonight.
One other thing, this stir over Fox News. Well, let's use a sports metaphor because we're about to do an interview all about women, okay? Is this working the umps? Do you think it's appropriate for the White House to say what is and what is not a news organization?
You know, I think that understandably, since you're in the news business, this is something that you're very interested in. I think the American people are a lot more interested in what we're doing to create jobs or how we're handling the situation in Afghanistan.
Fair enough, but your advisors raised this issue.
Well, no, I think that what our advisors have simply said is that we are going to take media as it comes, and if media is operating basically as a talk radio format, then that's one thing, and if it's operating as a news outlet, then that's another. But it's not something I'm losing a lot of sleep over.
Meanwhile, Senator Lamar Alexander goes to the Senate floor with stern words for the president. Don't build an enemies list. Earlier, Senator Alexander went on the record. Senator, blunt words to the president today, warning him not to have an enemies list?
It was a suggestion, and I went back to my days 40 years ago when I was on the Nixon White House staff, and I think I see some of the same early steps that I saw then.
Like what? What prompted this?
Well, this classifying people who disagree with you as your enemies. I mean, boycott of Fox News, threatening to take away the antitrust exemption from insurance companies. Politico reported that the White House wants to neuter the United States Chamber of Commerce, calling out senators who object to the czar. The czar is in the White House. The president himself said he was going to keep a list of bondholders who didn't agree to GM or Chrysler. I don't think that's an enemies list today, but I saw the road that it took the Nixon White House down. I don't want to see the Obama administration to go that way.
Now, Senator Gregg, used the term Nixify. Yeah. What do you think about that?
Well, Senator Gregg's very, very clever. He was standing next to me when I made the speech. We've both been around enough to see this. I understand it. I mean, you're in the White House. You feel like people are after you. They're not being fair to you, so you got to fight them back. And the result of that was John Dean, then Chuck Colson, presented this enemies list that had everybody from Daniel Shore to the New York Times to people in business, and it ruined the Nixon administration. I think what I hope the president will do is push all that street fighting out of the White House, back to the political consultants, focus his attention on truly presidential issues, and work with Republicans as well as Democrats. We respect him. He's doing some very courageous things in education, which I support. I'd like to see him do that instead of all this calling people out.
Any thought of calling the White House and calling the president, even Rahm Emanuel, and say, hey, put the brakes on the possibility of an enemies list, rather than doing it on the floor? Because, of course, we seized upon that. And, of course, we seized upon the Nixify because, those are the words that we in the media grabbed. Can you call them and talk to them?
Well, I could, but I think, I'm a United States Senator. I speak on the Senate floor. I said what I thought I should say, and I thought that was the appropriate place for me to say it. And I did it, I believe, in a respectful way. I suggested this. I did it with respect to the president. I pointed out the areas of cooperation. For example, Senator McConnell has said, I'll work with you on Social Security solvency. I'll make sure you get more Republican votes than you gave George W. Bush when he tried to do the same thing. I'm helping on education. Others will help on other things. But right now, their idea of bipartisan work is like, somebody attending a state fair and being at the shooting gallery. If they can just pick off one target, they think they've won the prize. That's not the way to do bipartisan work in the Senate.
In terms of the mechanics of working with this White House versus the last White House, or even any of the White Houses you've experienced with, is this more partisan? Is it more difficult, or is this just sort of the natural exchange between parties and between the Congress and the Senate and the White House?
I can't decide whether they don't want to be bipartisan or they don't know how. 40 years ago, I remember in 1968, when Lyndon Johnson, president, had to pass a civil rights bill, very difficult. He didn't have it written in the Democratic leader's office. He had a bigger Democratic majority then than President Obama does today. He had it written in the Republican leader's office. And over 4 or 5 weeks, people were streaming in and out of both parties. Dirksen, the Republican leader, got some credit. President Johnson got the Civil Rights Bill, and the country had confidence in it because it had that kind of bipartisan support in Congress.
So why don't we have that now? What's different? Why do we have the sense that this is, that the line is drawn in the sand?
Well, maybe people don't have long memories. It's very tempting when you have big majorities to think we can just ram things through. And technically maybe they can, but they won't build the kind of broad and lasting support in the country that you need for a big change, like on how do we deal with climate change, how do we change financial regulation, how do we change the health care system, how do we pass a civil rights law. People out in the country get afraid when they see one group ramming things through without checks and balances. And it helped President Johnson to have Senator Dirksen, the Republican leader, for 4 or 5 weeks saying, this is being done in my office, everybody come in and out. It was a very tough issue at the time, 1968.
People had varying reactions to the White House, President Obama, Rahm Emanuel, Axelrod's statements about Fox News. What's your sort of reaction to all this?
Well, my reaction is it's the same kind of thing I heard in 1969 and 70 when I began to hear Vice President Agnew talk about natoring nabobs of negativism. I think Bill Sapphire probably wrote that, the late Bill Sapphire. And that was sort of the back and forth of politics. But after a while, the New York Times and the Washington Post were on the enemies list. And I don't think President Obama wants to put a major network on the enemies list. And I don't think a major network should want to be there.
Senator, thank you, sir.
Thank you.